So powerful. Excuse me, folks. I'd like to thank Grant Thornton for sponsoring our lunch and keynote speaker today. At this time, we were extremely excited to begin our lunch conversation. Bob Mussett, my good friend, oversees all business operations for CBRE and also leads the national investment team in the region. Bob's background includes leasing, retail office and industrial space across Atlantic Canada, retail tenant rep for several national firms, and with his NIT team, some of the region's most significant sales transactions, including Dartmouth Crossing, Scotia Centre in St. John's, the Marriott Harbourfront in Halifax, and last year's sale of the Blackberry Building in Bedford, and over 3,500 multi-res apartment units. Please join me in welcoming Bob to the stage.
Thanks, Charlie. Hi. At our first CBR Outlook in 2002, Blake Hutchison, our president at the time, ended with the advice, "Go east, young man." We saw Newfoundland as a standout for real estate opportunity in the Atlantic region. We were bullish then and we're bullish now. And I'm happy to say we were right. Danny Williams joins us today, and there is no man more bullish about the future opportunities in Newfoundland and Labrador than Danny. We're going to talk about that and his massive Galway real estate development, but first let me give you a bit of background about Danny. For most of us, it's a reminder of his spectacular career, at least to date, because he's still going. Danny attended Memorial University and took poli-sci and economics. He's a Rhodes Scholar, graduated arts and law from Oxford, and then came to Halifax to Dalhousie and got a Bachelor of Law. It was at Dal that Danny assembled a group to explore the acquisition of Newfoundland and Labrador's first cable license. He did, over the years, built it into one of Atlantic Canada's largest telecommunication companies, and many years sold it. Danny practiced law, starting with his father's firm and then moving on to his own firm, litigating some significant cases in Newfoundland and Labrador, including Mount Cashel. Danny was president of offshore oil and gas company, supply company OIS Fisher, later Spectral. Danny was leader of the Conservative Party of Newfoundland and Labrador from 2003 to 2010. First elected in 2001 in Humber West, he became the 9th Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador, retiring from politics with an 80% approval rating. I don't think the Pope has an 80% approval rating. Now remember, it was on Danny's watch that Newfoundland became a have province. What a great moment that was. And it was made possible by Danny demanding and getting unprecedented royalty rates, equity stakes in oil field projects, and renegotiating the Atlantic Accord, yielding a $2 billion payment for the province. It was around that time, I think, that Danny forged that loving and warm relationship with Stephen Harper, but I might be wrong about that timing, I'm not sure. Danny brought the American Hockey League to St. John's with the Ice Caps. He has a long, deep track record of philanthropic work, and he's now president of Ducor, his development company. All of this is found in a terrific new documentary put out by the NFB called What Else, Danny. You can go online on the NFB site and download it. You can rent it or buy it, and it's a must-see, so go and have a look. Enough blathering from me. Please welcome Danny Williams.
Thanks, Bob.
Welcome.
Good.
Good to see you. Great documentary. You've been busy.
Yeah, I've been busy. The documentary this is not a plug for the documentary, by the way. I'm not on royalties or anything, but the NFB did it. And, you go into politics and you kind of open your life and you think, oh shit, what have I done? You're under a microscope, goldfish bowl, everything else. But then when you get a documentary done too, that goes even deeper because it's a broad spectrum. So you kind of throw it out there and place it in the hands of good producers and directors and hope it all works out. But what I like about it, there's a good parallel history of Newfoundland and Labrador in it. And so for anybody out there who doesn't like me at all, watch it just for the sake of finding out about our great province, because it does. It goes back, I was born in 49, so when we entered in Confederation. So it kind of documents the history of Newfoundland, parallel up from there. So it's, I think you'd enjoy it. If you get the chance to see it, I think you'll enjoy it. But
Another great part of the documentary was the focus on your mother. And I know she was involved in politics, must have been a big force in your life. Just tell us a bit about her.
Well, she's 90, and I think she has senior's Tourette's because she doesn't really give a shit what she says anymore. Which makes her wonderful. Every time I'm losing these off the sides of my ears. Every time we go to supper, and we take her out to supper, I phone up my brothers and sisters afterwards and say, "You're not going to believe what she said tonight," right? She always has a classic line, but she always hits it out of the park. Now, she'll call me Tommy or Ed, which are my other two brothers from time to time, and she gets that wrong, but I got to tell you, when it comes to analysing and opinions and sizing things up, she's sharp as a tack. And, of course, she steals the show in this documentary. She's says it the way it is, and she is the way she is, and so actually the people who produced it said if we had our time back, we would have called it Terry instead of Danny after her mother.
So part of that, her involvement in politics, one of the moments in the documentary, there's a comment about not being conservatives, but being staunch conservatives. And that was around getting the fair shake in Newfoundland. Is that what sort of brought you into the
it's part of it. I didn't sort of always go through life thinking, I want to get into politics. I want to be Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador. That was my goal. I lived politics because both herself and my father were very, very active. But in the back room, she managed campaigns and he fundraised and they did all of that. But we were there during the Smallwood era. And I've never ever said anything negative publicly about Joe Smallwood and don't intend to. I mean, Joe was there at a time when Newfoundland was in difficult times, good times and difficult times, and of course he had to build a province. But he was there for over 20 years, so it was like anything people wear over that period of time. And of course we were PCs in those days, so we became persona non grata as time went on, even more so. And then during that period, the Upper Churchill deal was signed in the latter years of his rule. So he kind of had embedded in a lot of us from Newfoundland and Labrador. We kind of got this giveaway mentality. Now, we can't blame anybody but ourselves, to be quite honest with you. We did bad deals. It wasn't because people stole them on us. We did bad deals. But as well, there were things, even on the Upper Churchill side, that were, the Canadian government didn't really help us. They were basically, didn't want to fool with what was going on with Quebec. That was all during the whole FLQ period and everything else. They didn't want to rock the boat. Lester Pearson was there. So they didn't come to our assistance, and we ended up doing a very, very bad deal. So that's kind of a little bit, for those of us who have been around for a longer time, that's a bit ingrained in our mentality. So when I finally got into politics, the mantra was kind of no more giveaways. We had basically really been too generous on a lot of the deals when we entered Canada. The iron ore was in Labrador, and it was a very valuable, bountiful resource. And we really weren't getting our fair share. If we had gotten, to be quite honest with you, we had gotten our fair share on that whole Upper Churchill deal, we would have been a Hab province 30 years ago. That's really what a difference it made. We really, really got screwed royally on it, to be quite honest with you. But we get it back in 2041. So I've always said if I can live to be 90, I'll be there for it. But if anything serious happens to me from a Nilna's perspective and we don't get it back, I'll fill myself up with plastic explosives and strap myself to the dam and take it all down river with me. So, but I think we're going to get it back. So I think we're okay.
So you're elected premier. Out of the gate, you run into a difficult labor strike. You held your ground there. And very unpopular move, but I think characteristic of how you carried yourself through your career. Then you get into this issue with Paul Martin about his reneging on that deal around the Atlantic Accord. Can you talk about that a bit?
Well, first of all, the strike piece. When it got in, we got a sort of a handle on the fiscal state of the province. Typical new governments. You went in, we got, I think we got PwC came in and gave us a study, and we were in a big hole. Our unfunded pension situation was really bad, and despite and also the debt of the government. So we had to put in basically wage restraint out of the gate. So I'm in 5 months. I've never had any bad labour relations. I had one very, very minor strike in the cable company I had that lasted maybe 3 or 4 days. And next thing I'm looking out the window, and there's 20,000 people out basically looking up at me up in the 8th floor going like that, and and saying all kinds of things. You could hear it, and I thought, God, what have I got myself in for? But 2 years later, I met some of those people, and they said, we now understand. We had to pull back and restrain before we could start to move forward. And so that's kind of when I got off to that side. So then anyway, on the Paul Martin, to come back to that, I realized pretty quickly that we had to get at the big issues and the big numbers. And you couldn't do it with a wharf here and a wharf there. And the normal federal, here's $1 million handout to keep everybody happy. I said, we've got to make $100 million and $1 billion changes. And so Paul Martin, I've got a lot of respect for Paul Martin, and I'm not here to make any political statements today, but I do. I have a lot of respect for Paul Martin. He made us a commitment, and he did. He came in, and he committed to do it. Then as he took over government, he just got busier and busier, and he got, I think, kind of waylaid by some of his confidence, but also more so by the federal bureaucracy, who kind of had that Atlantic Canadian mentality is, they got by without it before. We don't need to go do that. We got to concentrate on where the votes are and where everything else is, Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, out west. So we went through a period where we jockeyed back and forth, and then finally we went out to Winnipeg just a couple of days before Christmas, and hoping to get this done, because it was, it meant a minimum of a couple of $1 billion to us. And the minister wasn't even there. The finance minister shut it down immediately. So coming back in the plane, I said, look, we got to take the flags down, and which was a big deal because I was not trying to offend Canadians. I had needed to make a statement that we were getting shafted, quite simply. And so we took it down, and for the first day or so, there was a backlash, and then people then we went on a tour and left, I think, a day after Boxing Day, and went to the Post and the Globe and CTV and CBC and all of those, and told our story, and then we could see it just starting to swing. So by February, we got a meeting back in Ottawa, and Paul Martin came in and came through, and we ended up coming back with a $2 billion check. And the interesting thing is Nova Scotia were very much a part of that, because they had an argument, not nearly as strong as our argument, because we had been told we'd be principal beneficiary. And they came along with us, and I think Nova Scotia picked up $700-800 million out of that whole exercise, which was good, which was great for Atlantic Canada. We had been able to get a check for PEI in New Brunswick. I would have been thrilled, because finally we were starting to get a look in. But at the end of the day, Paul Martin lived up to his commitment, and I admire him for that.
Well, quite a defining moment, I think, for your government, and a great Valentine's Day gift. I think it was Valentine's Day. You got the check.
It was.
So, not to oversimplify this issue, but then there was a disagreement with Stephen Harper.
Who was that?
Some guy named Steve.
Steve.
I don't
Some guy named Steve.
I'm
I don't
sorry.
know. That rings a bell. Rings a couple of bells.
It was around the discussion of fallow fields, I think, that went off the rails, and his not doing what he said he was going to do, and then that left you to get into, and we can talk about Stephen Harper if you like, or we can leave that and move on to talk about, you then had to go and deal directly with the big oil, and Exxon was taking a stand that was pretty hard. Were they?
Well, we'll touch on the Harper piece just for a minute. Basically, he made a commitment to us, and he came to Newfoundland, and we wanted to talk about. We had a private meeting after we'd gone to a luncheon, and I said there's 4 or 5 major issues for the province I'd like to talk about, and we went into a meeting, his chief of staff and me and my chief of staff, and he sat down. Well, what would you like to talk about? I said, well, I got the fishery, I've got Happy Valley Goose Bay, I've got a couple of issues, but I said, oil and fallow fields is important, because we had a discovery, which was the Hebron discovery 25 years ago, and they refused to get on with it, and I need a little boost from Ottawa. And he looked at me. This is the first meeting after giving him 2 standing ovations now at a luncheon like this. And he said, you're not going to F with my country. I was kind of taken back. I was like, this is the first encounter that I really had with this clown. Anyway, so I just kind of leaned over to him, a little close. I said, well, you're not going to F with my province, because I'm going to chase you to the 4 corners of this effing earth in order to take you down. Needless to say, the meeting finished up pretty quickly after that. And ABC came out of it that night. And anyway, so then we had to move on to the oil companies. So if he wasn't going to help us from a federal perspective, the only other way to deal with it was to go to the oil companies and try and negotiate a deal on Hebron. And they had stood pat for a period of time, and we just held out and said, no, we'll just leave it in the ground. And I felt quite comfortable that eventually they would come to us, and they did. And we got a great deal. We got equity. It was the first equity piece. We got 4.9%, but we got super royalties. So once I think we got over 45 or $50 a barrel, our royalties increased dramatically. So it was worth tens of billions of dollars to us at the end of the day.
Fantastic. A great outcome again for the region. I think it sets the stage for all of us, and we're going to talk about that in a minute.
And from a regional perspective too, these projects, and we'll talk about Muscat as well, but these projects are great for the region. A lot of the work and a lot of the spin-off goes to the region. I don't have the numbers here. I mean, Craig, I'm sure, has a better handle on it because Craig was with Nalcor and did that major, but biggest bond issue there's ever in the country at that particular point in time. But, there's a lot of work going on right through the Maritimes, and, it's interesting. My first business encounter came out of Dell, and it was a partnership with the Halifax Group. And then now we're back on a major oil project, and it's with Emera, and it's proven to be a great partnership. And they shut down some coal and big transmission line that's being built, and it's a win-win situation. So there's a lot of joint things. We probably want to talk about a lot of joint things that we can do as a region. Because as I said, one of the panelists said today that rising tide lifts all boats, and what's good for everybody here is good for all of us.
So that whole Danny Chavez thing, and you're toe to toe with the chairman of Exxon, the largest oil firm in the world. Was that? Did it ever get personal? Did it ever bother you? Was it?
Well, it made us dig in. This guy, a nice guy, came up from Houston, and he was a regional chair of Exxon in the region, and he just sat across me. I said, "Look, we've got to get more on the Hibernia extension. We need to get more royalties. We started out at 1% royalty on Hibernia. Now that's fine because you had to get a first field in, you had to pioneer it, and then it slowly went to 5%. It was only because there was so much oil out there after all that we even got up to a reasonable royalty at all." And I said, "Look, on a Hibernia South, on the extension," I said, we've got to get more out. He said, Premier, he said, we're not making any money. This is oil's at $100 now, and they approved the project at $15. No, Premier, we're not making any money. I said, "Well, you got to be." I said, "It's like 6-7 times what it was when you started." No, I said, "Well, would you mind if we brought in? I think it was Navigant. We brought in forensic auditors to do it." "No, Premier, I wouldn't mind at all." I said, "Good, we're going to do it tomorrow." So we hired Navigant, got him to phone the chairman of Exxon Mobil, and they shut it down the following week. It was all over. There was no forensic audit being done. And at the end of the day, on Hibernia South, we've got in excess of 50% royalties once we get over a certain barrel height. So, again, a win-win. If it's risk and reward. If the price of oil is way, way down, we don't share the profit. But as it goes up, we get a bigger share. So you just got to. They insult us though when they do that. I mean, big corporations that come in and take us out, and that they just think we're stupid or we're morons or we're just going to give it all away like we've done before. So those kind of things kind of set you off, and I just think if you stand your ground, business then takes over and people get sensible.
Don't be a bully.
Yeah, no, don't be a bully. Absolutely not. Absolutely
Well, let's
not.
talk about oil right now. We've got a couple of slides here. I don't know if you can see that screen.
Yeah, I can.
This is we were chatting the other day just about the scale of the potential, and we're interested in Nova Scotia because we got Shell and BP active off our coast. But when you look at the opportunity that's out there,
Well, I can first just talk about Nalcor. Nalcor was Newfoundland Hydro was there, but we decided we'd try and set up, and God forbid I'd ever say this, something like Hydro-Quebec, maybe, and Statoil, or a major company that really has lots of expertise, really knows what it's doing, as opposed to trying to have the people in government, deal with the Chevrons and the Exxon Mobils and all the big players. So you need people who know the industry, and you need to develop a source of expertise within this company. So right now, Nalcor, as the parent company, basically has the Muscat Falls interest. It will have, it has the interest in Churchill Falls, controls Bull Arm, and it controls the oil and gas. It'll get into other renewables like wind, basically, and others. So it's a very diversified company. But what people don't understand is the potential that's out there in the north. We go back to that first slide. The small area that's in red are the size of our basins. Those basins that are off Newfoundland and Labrador, that are the existing basins, there's the orphan basins and the basins around it that are now being basically developed, are bigger than Norway. And I'm sorry, no, we're looking at the wells now. We think we need to go back. Yeah. First of all, let's go this one. That survey size there. We have now gone out and we've done 2D seismic, 3D seismic. The area that we have done seismic work on is actually bigger than the Gulf of Mexico. That yellow outline is the size of the Gulf of Mexico, which is shown on the other chart there. We are actually beyond that if you go down to the southeast coast of Newfoundland and Labrador. That's how big the seismic work that we have done. And we've gone out and we've done that work so that we can say, here are oil companies, here it is. We know where these basins are. Now you go out and have a look. And that's the order of magnitude. And I mean, when I first saw this chart, I was absolutely overwhelmed. When we were in government, we said, we've got to serve up more to the oil companies because we need to get more wells basically drilled. And and that's quite significant. And the other thing which is really interesting, as a result of that seismic work being done already, we have now increased the number of basins that have been discovered. Those pink, purpley colored basins are all new basins that have been discovered as a result of that seismic work that was done. Now, there hasn't been any drilling done in these basins. A lot of these are off the coast of Labrador. But it just shows the order of magnitude of these basins that goes all the way up to Greenland. So the potential for Newfoundland and Labrador offshore is absolutely enormous. We're now doing satellite work. It was the old Jed Clampett, up from the ground comes the bubble and crude piece. They actually check the satellites and they identify oil slicks. And of course, then the big thing is, well, that's just, billage. That's the spillage or barge oil. What's the term? Bilge oil. Yeah. That's come off ships. So they go back and check again a month later or a week later, and if that oil spill is still there, well, then obviously there's something that's continuing to happen. Then they go on the water and they check the quality of the oil, and they can then determine whether this is actually new oil that's coming up. So we have now identified basins out there that are absolute elephant basins on the basis of oil that's just bubbling up through the water and coming to the top of the surface. That's the level of detail that we're doing. So right now you can see average oil discovered per well. In Newfoundland and Labrador, we've done a little over 200 wells. We've drilled a little over 200 wells. The combination of the North Sea, Norway, and the UK is 5,300. If you do the math, that's less than 5%. That means we're very much only the tip of the iceberg. There's probably another 99 or 95% of oil out there that has not yet been discovered. That's how big the fields are, and our success rate is very similar. It's in between the UK success rate and the Norway success rate. So you can get an idea, all things being equal, we should have decades and decades and decades and billions of barrels of oil out. That might be an exaggeration. Several hundred million, maybe several billions. So you absolutely would be billions of barrels of oil out there for a long time to come. So, people as investors, and we'll talk about the industrial side and everything else, as investors in Newfoundland and Labrador, we're not worried if our GDP is down for a year or anything like that, and we'll talk just generally about that. The long-term play in Newfoundland and Labrador is a very, very long-term play. And, and from that perspective, too, we have Hebron, which will be coming on. Beta Nord is out there now, which is Statoil, and, of course, they're negotiating that right now. That will lead to more exploration. The underground in Valley Inco in Labrador will be developed because by 2016 that's supposed to be done. So there's an ongoing process. And what we tried to do in the province was have a long-term plan that went out till at least 2041 because that's the year that the Upper Churchill comes back. So as we go, even if it's status quo now, as we go through all these projects, Nalcor Energy will spin off significant dividends to the province of Newfoundland and Labrador for the 25 years. So I think we covered both of them. So, basically we're 3 times the size of the North Sea. The basins that have been identified are equivalent to the North Sea, but our total basins in our acreage is 3 times the North Sea, and our seismic is equivalent to the Gulf of Mexico. That's the order of magnitude,
And you've only drilled 200 wells.
We only drilled 200 wells. So I think it's just important to tell people in the room that so they get an idea of the opportunity that's there.
The other thing that I think we all get caught up in the drop of the price of oil, and when we look across Canada, we assume that all things are equal, and they're really not. The cost to produce oil in Alberta is dramatically different than the cost to produce oil in Newfoundland. So, where do you think? I heard you heard the economist this morning saying oil is going to be 70. I heard the chief economist of the Royal last week saying probably 75 to 80. So somewhere between $70 and $80. Is that enough to drive new exploration to get more of those wells drilled?
I try to read everything I can get my hands on when it comes to the price of oil. And when we were in government, we tried to do, on a budget basis, on an annual basis, try and predict the price of oil. It's impossible. You simply can't do it. There's too many variables, whether it happens to be the cartels, whether it happens to be the Putin factor, whether it happens to be, war in Iraq, whatever it is, it can drive the price of oil, $20, $30, $40 either way. So it's very difficult to predict. Even the publication, The Economist, I've read that, and I think they were indicating that the long-term price of oil may settle in at $75. But I got to tell you, nobody really knows where it's going. From Newfoundland and Labrador's perspective, the break-even point has always been in the $40 to $50 range. 40, 45 bucks is where the break-even point is. So after that, you're actually making money. From a cash flow perspective, the operating costs are only $15 a barrel. So you actually can spin cash flow once you start getting 16 bucks a barrel. So you're actually, even in downturns, you're still actually got some cash to work with. But break even isn't at 40 to 50. So, we're fine. And oil has got to settle at a range. I mean, the Saudis have to get a certain amount because their social commitments are huge. So they've got to get the price of oil back up. They're just trying to, break down the frackers and there is a Putin factor here, which, it's difficult for people to ascertain exactly what it is, but I think they're trying to punish Russia, and that's all part of it. So I think we're good. I think we're in great shape. And of course, the other thing too is, volume will do it. As we start to get more exploration, and we just now put in a new land tenure system, which allows the oil companies a little more time to assess the seismic and come back. They don't have to do it in a 6-month period and then go in and bid. And so we've done that. There's going to be, a new generic regime come in. So we're doing everything we can to encourage the companies to get out there and drill. And if they drill, baby, drill, they should find more oil. And I think we'll good. It's hard to be dependent, and be an oil and gas economy because that's not our goal. Our ultimate goal here is to spin from oil and gas to renewables. And then when Stephen Harper's 130, he made a commitment last night. I think at the end of the century, he's going to be. He'll have a green energy plan for all of us, and there'll be no oil and gas. So good luck to you, Stephen. But anyway, Newfoundland will be there if you're not. At least the province will be around longer than myself and Stephen will.
So that's our fingers are crossed. We hope you find more oil. We hope in Nova Scotia we're going to find some oil, and it's all good for the region. So I'm a big believer in that whole regional play. I think more cooperation is a good thing. So in the late 90s, you're out looking for a site. We're going to talk about Galway now. You're out looking for a site for a golf course. You buy 1,400 acres. Now, I don't know much about golf, but you don't need 1,400 acres to build a golf course. And then you add a little bit more, and now you've got this massive site, spectacular location. There's an aerial shot of it, great arterial routes around it. 10 minutes.
That's probably
the
best one there.
That's a great shot. 10 minutes from downtown, 20 minutes from the airport, 2,400 acres. It must have been more than golf.
It started, in all fairness, certainly started with golf. We'd built the Wilds, which is about 50 minutes outside of St. John's, which is a spectacular championship course, beautiful course. And it built a small 9-hole up next to the family home up in Holyrood, which is also a very pretty golf course. It built that when the kids were young. They couldn't go for 6 hours for a game of golf. I'm not a great golfer, by the way, but I couldn't go for 6 hours for a game of golf, so I built 3 holes and played them 3 different ways, and then built 2 more and 2 more and 2 more after that. And anyway, that course ended up pretty nice. So anyway, we're looking for something closer to St. John's, and one July weekend, I just read the weekend paper, and there was Newfoundland and Labrador Housing Corporation selling off, I can't remember, maybe 20 or 30 parcels throughout the province, and one parcel was just exactly now where Galway is. It was 1,400 acres. So I put in a bid and got it. Nobody else bid on it, and so I had 1,400 acres for a golf course. So anyway, we built the golf course, and it's proved to be a great little golf course because it's right in a great residential area, so there's lots of activity. And of course, then I went into government, and of course, everything was in as in a blind trust. So I kind of just sat on it basically for 10 years. But during that period, the city and Paradise and Mount Pearl and Conception Bay South were all creeping towards this location because basically the city has run out of space on the eastern end. So it was the ideal time to develop this, and there was a 190 elevation contour issue there because actually that particular location, and you've been there, is paralleled pretty well with Cabot Tower in St. John. So there's a terrific panoramic view of the entire region from that site, and it's located at the intersection of Paradise, Conception Bay South, Mount Pearl, and St. John's. So it ended up being an ideal spot to start this, what I'd call an ambitious project. I don't pretend to be a land developer, not by a long shot. But I am now. Yeah, that's for sure. But anyway, but still, though, and we're moving forward. And what we've done is we're basically doing approximately 300 acres, and we're developing the residential piece. The industrial piece is ready right now. residential, hopefully by the end of the year, early next year. And the commercial retail side will be in 2016. And we have two partners that, out of the Maritimes. Plaza are in on the commercial retail side with us, and we're hoping to put minimum of 600,000 square feet on the retail site, which again is approximately 100 acres. And of course, we're in the final stages now of finalizing our arrangements with Clayton as well, and we're going to do, I think it's 114 acres we got there, Craig. And we're quite excited because, I recognize my own limitations. I want people in the business, good partners, who know the business, and we can produce a product that's got to be first class. I mean, this is a little bit of a legacy piece too. I don't want to go out, with a mess out there, and people say, "Oh yeah, Williams went out with a bang and left us a mess out there." So we want this to be a first class property. And as a matter of fact, on the Galway logo there, which is the entrance, or will be the entrance to the industrial piece, one of the first hires we hired was the landscape of the golf architect that we had build the golf courses, because we want this to be pretty, for want of a better term. And those of you guys who are out making a buck on the gravel are saying, "Oh yeah, pretty, he's going to lose his shirt on that." Well, it's got to look nice if people are going to come to it and people are going to want to be there. And the comment was made in the industrial panel there this morning. People want to be in quality areas with the quality products, and so that's what we're going to try and do to the best of our ability. So we're quite excited about it. And so industrial is ready now, and we'll be rolling into the other two. So we've developed them all concurrently, and fortunately, every contract that we've awarded, and we spent a lot of money in the first stages, have been to separate contractors. There's been nobody got all the business. We spread all the work around. So again, it's an attempt to try and spread it out evenly and keep that economy going too.
Yeah, amazing to see. Great infrastructure already in place, and I guess you're starting to pave some of those access roads and entry points now.
Yeah, that entrance there where the Galway sign is, there's the first layer of pavement is down now. We'll get into completing that. Curb and gutter's gone in now, and then over the course of the summer we'll start to do the landscaping and again just pretty it up, and then of course we have land sales which have already commenced. So we're in good shape.
Earlier today we heard about strategic partnering. So again, visionary on your part to involve two great companies. We know them both, and so Clayton is working on the housing section.
Right.
Where does that stand now? Is that
Well, we're just close to fine. We have approvals on the industrial and we have approvals on the commercial retail piece. We're now down in the final stages of working through the approvals with the city on the residential piece. And of course, the officials from Clayton, Mike has been in, and his people have been in to meet with the city. And it's good for the city of St. John's. I mean, our mayor was up here, I think, a couple of years ago or last year, and spoke generally about Galway. But it's been good for the city because, we're getting that Halifax, that Nova Scotia flavor into it. They're starting to see things differently, look at things that they may have been doing right or doing wrong. And, Mike's been marvelous in just coaxing them along and informing them. And, it's got to be a partnership. We've all got to work together. So that's been good. And, if we're going to try and bring something new to the province. And I think this, the secret now on a go-forward basis for all of us, sure, the economy is going to be a little bit tight. But we have to offer something special. If you want to sell in your marketplace, people got to look and say, okay, yeah, I'd rather be there than there, and I think that's what we're going to try and do. So we can get a fair share of the market by offering a quality product that's niche, then that's what we're going to try and do.
Yeah. Your last day in office, you said as you were leaving, the best is yet to come. You still feel that way about Newfoundland?
Yeah, I really do. And I've always felt good about Atlantic Canada. And one of the comments at supper last night was that, the Atlantic Canadian marketplace, and the term wasn't used traditional, but I think it was reliable. I think might have been the term that one of your people mentioned, and I just thought it's good because Atlantic Canada is stable. We know what it is to go through tough times, and we can handle it. And we go through downturns and upturns, but we're good. And I think in Newfoundland and Labrador, I wanted to show you those charts just to get you an idea of the order of magnitude of how big it is out there. And when Nova Scotia turns around then and basically does some of this, I know they're probably doing it right now actually, some of this seismic work, and sort of reaches out to these companies and says, here are the basins that we have now. Get in there, spud them, and find the juice, and that's it. And of course, as well, now we also got this pipeline from Churchill. With the mirror. So as a result, now we've got the transmission. When I say pipeline, I'm talking hydro pipe, basically. But the juice is coming down from Labrador and going in through Cape Breton and then through New Brunswick and down into Maine. And we can go both ways with that. If in fact we have a power outage in Newfoundland, we can have power transported back. It's a two-way. I just keep using the term pipe, but it's a two-way pipe. So it works both ways. We can buy power from the Maritimes as well in times if we have any difficulties. So, You know, it's a bond, it's a link. You know, it enabled us to get around Quebec, which is unfortunate. You know, Quebec should, and it's not Quebec, it's Hydro-Quebec, you know, should be cooperating. We should all be working together as the East Coast of Canada. But because they're such a significant monopoly for years, they just keep pushing back and trying to make it more difficult. And we've gone to the Régie, and we've fought them every step of the way, and we've spent $50 million in litigation over the last couple of years. But eventually, you know, we'll break through and we'll realize. But as a maritime Atlantic alternative, you know, we're there. And, you know, we've got a good, and that's a real physical bond that connects our provinces. And like I said, you know, the other partnerships that are happening within Galway, and my first cable partnership, you know, our connections as Atlantic Canadians are huge. And I got to be honest, I mean, part of the, you know, the Harper thing way back was when he referred to us as a culture of defeat. You know, we're not a culture of defeat. We're survivors. You know, we can get through really tough times, and we can come out and we can hold our heads high, and that's what I think we can all do, and that's why I'm really bullish on Newfoundland and Labrador. I'll bet the farm on that province, and if it goes down, I'll go down with it.
So partnerships is, I don't know about the rest of the country, but I think, you know, often Atlantic Canadian businessmen get the ball and get their elbows up, and we're not great at partnering. So is that something you see more opportunity?
Absolutely.
Or in not only just governments and large corporations, but just in the general business terms?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting you mention it because, you know, a lot of Atlantic Canadian businesses were kind of family businesses. So I remember when we tried to put the cable companies, we had our company, which is, I think, about 75, 80,000 subscribers in St. John's. And I was trying to get the New Brunswick and the PEI group and the Nova Scotia group to come together and form one large Atlantic Canadian cable company at that time because we'd have more mass, we'd have more clout, we'd have economies of scope and scale. But there was that kind of pushback. It's like, you know, people didn't want to get in and own 25% of something. They wanted to own 100%. And, you know, you can get bigger and better. You know, this room knows it anyway. But when you're dealing with, you know, wholly owned family companies is a little bit different. And, you know, and I think we could have taken that to bigger and greater things. But as it happens, I think now there's a whole new world, and we realize we're all, you know, we're global in our thinking. But we certainly have got to get bigger regionally and get away from kind of myopic attitudes on how we grow businesses.
So opportunities and threats, what do you see the biggest threats out there on the horizon for the region and for Newfoundland and Labrador?
But they're going through difficulty, and I don't like to try and speak about Nova Scotia or New Brunswick or PEI because, you know, I don't know enough about the economies and the governments. It's not fair to me get up and try and pontificate about what's good or what's bad. You know, I can say from Newfoundland and Labrador's perspective, I mean, we've had, you know, continued growth down there. Our incomes above 75,000 all the way up 100, 150, 200, 250 plus have grown incrementally significantly in the last 5 or 6 years. We're larger in those income brackets than percentage-wise than any other provinces in Atlantic Canada, you know, and, you know, even though our GDP is going to pull back, our retail sales hit, you know, top retail sales in 2013 in vehicles. We'll go again above that next year. Our housing will hold its own, but we're now moving from a level where, you know, disposable incomes are very, very high. I remember when I first got into government, and the first briefing I had from the Department of Finance was, well, we're 505,000 people, and, you know, in 20 years we'll be 475. And I just kind of looked and said, so we're going to be extinct in another 100 years, basically, that's what you're telling me. And they said, well, you know, it goes like that. I said, no, tear it up. I said, that's not where we're starting. You know, we're going to start, you know, on the basis that we're going to grow. And we did. From 2008 to 2013, we've had growth. And we're now up to 525, which is not a big number by any comparison, but still, it's all about up here. You've got to, you know, it's positive feelings, optimism can drive economies and drive people to greater heights than they would normally try and achieve. And I think it's the naysayers that really get me. I think that's probably why I finally got out of politics, because I had a thin skin when I got in. I thickened up in order to survive. But towards the end, I figured I was going to start coming out swinging again. So I decided it was time to get out. But, you know, it's the negativity that sometimes we see in the media, some aren't. And, you know, even on social media now, it's so difficult now because the cowards who can hide behind some other name will get in and shoot at people and try and destroy reputations, and, you know, they get away with it, but the overall masses get it. And so, you know, I feel good about it. I think we should be bullish on Atlantic Canada. I know I certainly am on Newfoundland and Labrador. I think we do. I think we got a great thing going down here. We got a great lifestyle, and we've got, you know, a real entrepreneurial spirit at the grassroots here in this region of the country, and we'll survive. Big time.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been great. if you get a chance, download that the great documentary, Danny. It's at the NFB site. It's not only great about this man, but the history of Newfoundland. It's terrific. So, thanks very much.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks very much. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me.
I want to thank you, Bob. Danny, as usual, enlightening, effervescent, awakening. At this time, I want to draw your attention to the screens beside me. The next series of sessions will begin in a few moments. And please note the 3 concurrent sessions being offered and their locations. We plan to be back here at around 3 o'clock for our closing roundtable.